Hello everyone, sorry for the abrupt music shift there, and welcome to the 411 Ground and Pound Radio Show, your weekly look into the wide, wacky, wonderful world of mixed martial arts. I'm Robert Winfrey, I'm the host of this occasional crap show. Tonight we will be reviewing UFC Fight Night 134, so many numbers, 134, and previewing UFC Fight Night 135. 134 came your way. The UFC's debut in Boise, actually, in the state of Idaho. And as someone who lives just south of there, I'm from Utah, for those of you who don't know, I'm a little pissed. Boise got, 133 and 134, excuse me, I misread that. Boise got Junior Dos Santos, and the one that came here, we got a main event that was Alex Caceres and, flame out, Yair Rodriguez. Like, come on. And I fail to understand that. I'm not entirely sure that Boise is a significantly larger market, but they got a likable former champion. We got a couple of guys who decided that, yay, spins for no apparent reason beyond spinning. Tad bitter. Anyway, so we'll be reviewing all of that. We will, and then preview UFC Fight Night 134, which will be the UFC's return to Germany. It will be the sad last stand of Mauricio Shogun Rua, as he is knocked out by Anthony Smith. We'll get to that. We'll get to that card as well. So that's kind of what's on the table. Of course, any major news items that have come out over the last week or so, we'll touch on those as well. Alright, let's jump into here. I have the full panel with me here this week. First up, my regular partner in crime, Jeff Harris, is back with us. Jeff, how are things?
I'm Jeffrey Harris, and this is not how Eskimo brothers should talk to each other.
Ugh. Yeah, we are going to have to mention that whole thing, aren't we? Ugh. And back with us for the first time in a couple of weeks, because the schedule finally freed up a little bit, Pat Mullen, all the way from the East Coast. How are you, Pat? Been a while.
Spinal injuries aside, I am fantastic.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
We're doing just fine. I will come back just like Randy Orton.
Oh, God, don't. Because then I'll have to cut you out of my life. I'm just warning you right now. If you come back like Randy Orton, that's it. Alright, anyway, the main event from last night's card. Boy, was this a downer. In every possible way. Junior Dos Santos, returning from a layoff that was induced by a drug test failure that he was deemed not responsible for because, there were like three guys. It was like him, Jacare, and somebody else.
He was responsible, but he was given a 6-month suspension.
I am not holding him responsible for...
He was partially responsible. He received a 6-month suspension.
Which is not what he should have received.
All right, under the USADA rules, technically, if you use a tainted supplement, the athlete is still technically at fault to some degree.
Which is a profoundly stupid way to handle that.
In your opinion?
No, like you're talking about strict liability. Strict liability is a almost universally disproven methodology for enforcing or standard for holding things like this too. Almost
and
like
you're
universally.
Technically allowed to film the checkpoints, the TSA checkpoints, but you'll still get stopped and harassed by the TSA.
Now, this is just the way that whole thing ran. I would just be much happier if when they were able to independently confirm things like this, that you issue a reprimand rather than even a retroactive suspension. But,
well, you're just going on the assumption that nothing shady was going on from the athlete's side. You're assuming that just because they tested the supplement and the supplement appeared tainted, that it was not purposeful or a malicious attempt to gain an athletic advantage or cheating.
Yeah, and given the amount that he was tested positive for, it doesn't actually benefit you all that much. Again, my issues with the implementation of drug testing aside. Junior was back. This was his first fight.
I mean, it's just the presence. they can only test for the things they know about.
Yeah,
Athletes could be taking things that have not been discovered yet.
I assume
You can't deny that possibility exists.
I assume everyone in the World Cup was on something. I assume not everyone in the Olympics is on something.
All right, if you assume that,
yeah, you're not wrong.
If you assume that, Robert, then you shouldn't be so naive about the fighters of the UFC.
I'm not naive about it. I think the circumstances
You're
around
a little
this...
naive.
I'm not saying Junior's never taken anything. I'm saying the evidence in this circumstance did not warrant the punishment he received. Again, I pretty much assume they're all on something to one degree or another.
I think the only time the punishment did not warrant the evidence did not warrant the punishment, I think, was Chad Mendes.
No, because Mendes was actually guilty of that. His defense of that was such shit. Like, no, it was this topical cream for my eczema. No, buddy. Not at all. What you tested positive for does not even transfer via topical application that way, much less in the levels he tested for.
Yeah, what he tested positive for is an injectable.
Unless he changed his story between his initial defense of, it's my eczema cream, to the actual discussion of, to when he actually went before USADA and, went through that process. But, I maintain that the best way, if we're going to have this brief sidebar here, the best way to actually end, or at least severely curtail this, is to remove the incentive to cheat. Now, the best, and I tend to think that the best way to do that is the same way that bodybuilding does it. Bodybuilding has one division that is natural, and one division that is not. If you want to be a natural bodybuilder, here's this division. You don't take anything.
Now,
or you can just go to Bellator.
Well, I was going to say, now, to be fair, bodybuilding does have a natural Mr. Olympia. However, the fact that last year, the person who won the natural Mr. Olympia, do either guys know who it is?
No, I couldn't tell you who won the actual one either.
Bill Kazmaier?
Different sport. It was Rob the Freak Terry, who you guys may remember, from TNA Wrestling.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah. He won
used to team with Brutus Magnus, right? Or wait.
Yes. He was part of that whole British invasion team. He was the quote-unquote natural Mr. Olympia. Which should tell you what their testing is like.
Yeah. Anyway, but, I just feel that the best way to really address this is to just have here's a division where you can juice to the gills.
It's called Bellator.
No, under the UFC's auspices. Just like, here, we'll have a division that is natural, and we will drug test out the wazoo, and we'll have one that is not. You get to choose which one you want to compete in.
I don't think you can, in a competitive combat sport, I don't think that would be okay, because I don't think you can do, like, bodybuilding. You're not trying to kick people's heads off.
No, but again, there's only two ways this goes. We either get more and more fascist about drug testing, which leads to nothing good.
Oh,
or we find a lateral thinking. That's what the
industry demanded several years ago. That's what the industry demanded. They wanted fascism, so that's what we have.
I know, and it was a mistake.
You get the government
now.
There are consequences to elections, Robert. You get the government you vote for.
I know. Anyway, as for the main event, Junior Dos Santos, who was last seen being thrashed by Stipe Miocic inside of one round, scored a unanimous decision victory over promotional newcomer Blagoy Ivanov, 50-45 across the board. I think I gave Ivanov the third, but that was... there's only so much of my scoring from this entire event I stand beside. There's not a lot.
It was a marginal third round for Ivanov.
Yeah, I'm not... There's other decisions and other scorecards.
Let me just skip this fight.
You can skip it, hang on. There's other decisions and other scores on this card that I take serious umbrage with. This is not one of them. Just
The
Look at you,
judges
Bermudez.
yeah,
no judge gave a round to Ivanov at all.
I know, and I don't disagree with that. Again, I gave Ivanov the third, and that was it, and that was somewhat marginal. So anyone who went 50-45 for JDS, I don't care enough to get up in arms over it. The real problem here for this fight, and jeez, how do I say? This was just a matchup that is horrible, and I mean that like this. And I don't mean horrible for one guy over the other, in terms of, oh, this is a bad stylistic matchup. I mean, this is just a fight, this is a type of fight that will produce a fight that looks like this 9 times out of 10. The way to beat Junior Dos Santos is relatively straightforward at this point. You pressure him, he doesn't circle well, he backs all the way to the cage, and tries to circle with his hands low, you can clip him constantly. And he almost always circles to his right, so it's real easy to decide whether or not you're going to throw with the left. Your biggest... The biggest concern you have when he's trying to circle is, do I throw the left hook or the left high kick? Because he's going to walk into it. Unfortunately, Blagoy Ivanov does not utilize a forward style of motion, a forward style of striking. He comes from the Tyron Woodley school of striking. Back myself into the fence, let them commit their weight, blitz them across the cage with counters. Now, again, that is not unique to Tyron Woodley either. There's plenty of other guys who have utilized that same basic philosophy, but it should give you all a... Rather than make an obscure reference, this should be something you all have a frame of reference for. And that just matches up badly. I mean, if you want to know how far Junior Dos Santos has fallen, when Ivanov was moving forward, he was winning. I mean, for as badly as he was losing the rest of this fight, when he was listening to Javier Mendez, who was telling him what to do, or when he was actually doing what he was supposed to do, what has historically been proven to beat Junior Dos Santos, he was winning. But he's a crappy heavyweight. And Junior, despite all of his flaws, and how badly he has aged in the sport recently, was able to avoid was able to avoid most of the big shots, was able to keep the fight at his pace, at his distance, and score a unanimous decision win. Now, I love Junior. He's one of my favorite heavyweights ever. He's a very happy guy. One of the pre-fight things was him talking about his son, and it's just like the most genuinely happy thing in the world, looking at this guy talk about his kid. And then he called for a trilogy fight with Stipe Miocic, and I went, no. Why do you want to get knocked out again? Because...
Fighters are excellent liars, and they're good at lying to themselves.
I mean, because Stipe would just do what he did last time. This is an excellent rebound fight if you're Stipe Miocic. If you heard this call out and you want to get back on the horse after the loss to Cormier, you take this fight.
Look, fighters want to... Junior lost that fight, the rematch to Stipe. They're 1-1. In his mind, he deserves like a rubber match, you know?
I don't know. If that's what he wants, I can't stop him, but he's going to get knocked out.
He believed he lost to Cain Velasquez because of overtraining the first time. And then they had the rematch, and he got destroyed again. Fighters do that to themselves, and they do it throughout their careers. I'm not saying I agree with Junior, but that is why the wheels are turning this way in his mind.
Yeah.
He believes he's still a top heavyweight, and you know what? Heavyweight is such a garbage division. Off a win like this, he'll probably get ranked in the top 5.
He was.
Yeah, he will.
He was what, top 10 going into this or some such?
Wasn't he like 6 or 7, if I'm not mistaken?
I want to say 7. I mean, you'd think I'd remember this. I typed it out.
He was 8.
8, okay.
He's 8. He was recently 7. I guess he's 8 now. Because Stipe losing dropped him down.
Well, it didn't just drop him down; it introduced a whole other person.
Right,
So
it
put
put a
someone
whole
else who got it brought in. So
it bumped everyone back behind him.
Yeah,
Francis Ngannou. Look, Francis Ngannou after those back-to-back losses, to me, he shouldn't be in the top 5 right now.
he should
He
not.
just should.
He shouldn't be anywhere in the top anything after that fight with Derek.
I
was
agree.
bad.
And let's see. Curtis Blades, number 3. Okay. Derek Lewis, number 2.
I mean, Blaze is there by virtue of winning a couple fights in a row. Like,
I mean,
Right.
realistically, we should have swapped Volkov and Blades here in these rankings. Volkov should be 3, Blades should be 5. Well, Blades should be 4, and Ngannou should be off the list, but that's a whole other thing.
yeah.
So yeah, Junior will move up a few slots. And again, if you're Stipe and you want a rebound fight, I'd take it. As for Ivanov, I don't know. Someone outside the top 15, or someone like, I mean, Shamil Abdurakhimov is there. You could do that. They both kind of suck.
Justin Willis.
Willis is an option.
Stefan Struve.
Ugh, Struve.
If he gets past Tibura.
Tuivasa.
Tuivasa is
Olenek.
actually coming up in the world. I'd rather, if you want, I want to see what Ivanov can do against someone more his level.
All right. Justin Willis.
Andre Arlovsky.
Quite frankly, I don't
Arlovsky.
even want. I don't even really want to see Ivanov fight again.
I don't blame
After
you.
that, based off that performance.
I don't blame you. I mean, he's from Bulgaria, which is a huge knock on everyone. Sorry, that's an overly dramatic statement about the country.
How did
Bulgaria.
Fedor lose to this guy in combat sambo?
Fedor was on the downswing, and this guy's actually I mean, you have to really understand the scoring system in combat sambo and really appreciate it to like their match, because there's a lot of really technical stuff that only takes place in that discipline that goes into that encounter.
Interesting.
I mean, again, and he doesn't fight in a way that necessarily maximizes that skill set, because it's a lot of clinching in some respects, and he's a relatively talented judoka as well. He just doesn't really fight in the clinch when it comes to MMA all that often, which is weird, but...
He's really uncomfortable in that position because he's taking strikes in that position, and that's a problem for him. Also, a lot of the grips and things of that nature that you don't use in sambo but do get used in a live fight scenario, he just hasn't adapted to it at all.
Yeah. So again, stick him someone outside the top 15, give or take. I mean, you do need to invest a little bit in some bodies at heavyweight that are going to be around for a few years, so... I mean, if he drops 2 more, yeah, get rid of him. That's not a problem at all. But Pat, I wanted to ask you real quickly about Junior in general. I mean, this guy has aged horribly and has faded from his... I mean, this guy was, 3-4 years ago on top of the world. Is this just the beatings from Cain Velasquez that did this, or is there something else that... Is it a lack of adaptation on his part? I mean, what's going on here?
He's not changed anything if you look at what he did last night. A lot of what he did that he's had success with in the past, it's not any different. It's the same Junior that it's been. He did a lot of body punching last night, which he's one of the few guys who do it regularly, and it's not well set up. He's very open for counters when he does it, but he fought against a very passive opponent who, rather than try to take advantage of that, was more inclined to cover up or back away and not exchange and not try to counter. And it shows here. And the problem with that is better guys are going to exchange fire with him, and his defensive liabilities have never been fixed. Aside from punching to the body, he still likes to extend both hands when he punches. That's how Alistair Overeem was able to catch him and knock him out. You leave both hands extended and your chin is up, you are likely to get hit by somebody who knows anything about what they're doing. That's what
Didn't he used to be better about that, though? I thought he used to have better defensive boxing.
He had movement, and nobody else was really understanding the principle of moving to your strong side. But, the thing about that is, once he fought guys who were more competent in that respect and able to pressure him more, he checked out and never did anything to fix it. He's always had the bad habit of holding his chin higher than he should. That's always been there. That's how he's gotten clipped cleanly by a lot of guys. Again,
a lot of MMA fighters do that though,
and a lot of them get clipped because of it.
Especially if you're fighting at heavyweight with big, strong guys who don't necessarily need great technical prowess to hit you and hurt you. And that's the problem, is that the guys who've done it to him, some of them are very good technically in terms of their punching mechanics. Overeem is, Stipe obviously is. Kane was at a time developing good hand skills, and that's how Kane was able to hurt him early in their second fight and take advantage of it. It's just Junior's not doing anything to get better at what he did. He still seems to feel like what he did was enough, and it's not against guys who are improving. He'll beat the not very best fighters in the division, but against guys who understand what he does and where he's weak, he's never going to do better against them.
Does he beat Derek Lewis?
Based on Lewis, who showed
based
up
on the way they match up?
He could. I mean, if the same Lewis shows up to fight Junior that showed up to fight Francis, he loses.
Yeah.
But, I mean, again, he might, and heavyweight is a terrible division. Alright, moving on. In the co-main event, Sage Northcutt finally gets a welterweight win in the UFC when he knocks out Zach Otto in the second round. There's still a couple of glaring holes in Northcutt's game that he really does need to address going forward. One is his takedown defense, because he's got a good sprawl if you come at him with a double leg. He's got really good hips, he's good about grabbing a front headlock, he's good about trying to snap you down. But if you switch that to a single leg, he's suddenly much more rudimentary. That's what Otto got him down with pretty consistently here. He was able to get in on a single leg, switch to a high crotch, push him to the fence, run the pipe, or just trip him down. And off of his back, Northcutt does a few things defensively rather well, but he's really passive about it. He's not actively necessarily trying to get up so much as he is hoping for you to give him an opening for him to regain his feet. On the feet, there's still two things that are really worrisome to me. One is range management. Because if he's all the way outside in like kicking distance, he's pretty good. He's pretty good there. He's kicked a lot throughout his entire life. He's good from that distance. When he gets into the pocket is where things get weird. Because he's got fast hands, but he tends to throw hooks from his waist rather than from his shoulders. And he doesn't move his head. If you look at his last two fights, this one Otto cracked him in the opening salvo of this fight was Otto blasting him with a right hand that very nearly finished him. When he fought Thibault Goudy, every time he got into the pocket, into that close punching distance, he was getting tagged. It was just Goudy kept trying to switch into grappling from there instead of continuing to exchange. And some of this is to be expected from a developing fighter like Northcutt. Your offense comes before your defense, almost exclusively, in terms of practical application. It's a problem that he really does need to fix, because when he's on offense, he's good. He's got, again, fast hands, he throws in combination generally. He's clearly got some power, but there's those little in-between spaces where he's going to get hit, he's going to get hurt. A better wrestler, and Zach Otto's a good wrestler. A better wrestler is not going to give him the space he needs on the ground. A better jiu-jitsu player than Zach Otto would have found many opportunities from that top position to do more damage. But on the whole, the way he's progressed over his last 3 or 4 fights, it needs to be noted, and I'm curious to see what he does from here. Again, be that success or failure, because I imagine either one is going to be on a relatively entertaining scope to watch, if nothing else. So, Pat, I'll start with you here. Your thoughts on this one, on Sage generally? Anywhere I might be off the mark? Anything you want to elaborate on?
Part of the thing with Sage is he's clearly making improvements in what he does. He's still relying a little too much on his natural athleticism in certain respects to try to escape or evade situations. And I think you pointed out the best example of how he reacts when a guy switches from a double leg to a single leg on him. Instead of, doing the intelligent defense against that, he kind of just tries to play the 1 foot game and be a super athlete and escape it. And it doesn't work out well. Say whatever you want to say about, Zach Otto not being, a phenomenal fighter, but he's a guy who knows how to take somebody down. And that's why he was able to do it, because Northcutt didn't defend it correctly, and that gave Otto the opening to score the takedowns when he wanted to. Northcutt seems like he's handling fighting a bigger guy a little bit better than he was, because that cut-toe lightweight he was making was really draining him of a lot. And this is definitely a weight class that's more natural for him, where he should be fighting. But that being said, he still has deficiencies he's going to have to fix, especially if he wants to contend. Welterweight is still a stacked division with a lot of up-and-coming talent, and there's a lot of guys in there with real good wrestling that are going to be a huge problem for him if he wants to get to the next level. So he needs to fix those defensive liabilities, and he needs to do that by getting back to wrestling basics, not relying on his athleticism. He's training at Alpha Male now. Alpha Male's a wrestling camp. There are a lot of guys in there who come from a wrestling base and can help show him how to correctly fight against these things, but he's got to be willing to learn that and willing to work at it rather than rely on his athleticism, which not only is not going to be the answer against good guys, but as time goes on, injuries accumulate, fights happen, that athleticism isn't going to be there for a long time.
Yeah, it's one of the first things that fades is that quick twitch muscles. But again, I'm curious to see where it goes from here. Jeff, what are your thoughts on this one?
I thought Sage showed some impressive growth here. I thought he looked good. I am really concerned about that takedown defense because watching the fight, it looked like it was remarkably easy to just get him to the mat. And it looked like a more competent wrestler, a more competent fighter would give Sage a worse night of his life. So I kind of see him just sort of staying at this level where he's beating more of these mid-level, slightly below mid-level opponents, but not reaching quite the upper echelon unless he addresses these weaknesses you guys both talked about.
Well, and beyond that, too, in that finishing sequence where he actually did get Otto back up and unleashed, really a lot of offense in a very short amount of time, I was impressed that he was able to carry his power a little bit better here. And he does have really good hand speed when he lets his hands go. That's something where if you're going to be fighting against a lot of wrestlers who can trouble you with that, Robert talked about that passive nature. Be the aggressor and don't let the pressure come in at you. You be the one to pressure them. Back them up. Dazzle them with these fast hands and use your athleticism for quick movements to side so that they can't correctly time an angle on you to get a grip on you with a double leg attempt or a single leg attempt. He's gotta step up the aggression too.
Yeah, because when he's going forward, he's a bit of a buzzsaw, but there's a very clear switch that needs to be thrown, and he's not good at... It's a switch, not a dial at the moment, and he needs to get better at dialing that up intelligently rather than simply having it be off, 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 on, off, 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 on, something like that. All right, next up... Jeez. I'm just going to go through the rest of this, and then we can talk about anything specific that we want to talk about, because I don't want to go in depth with most of these.
Money Mendez.
You will have your time to talk about Chad Mendez. Rick Glenn defeated Dennis Bermudez via split decision. There was... I'm going to take umbrage with with one of the scores here. There was two 29-28s for Glenn, which is defensible, and a 30-27 for Bermudez, which is not. If you went 29-28 Bermudez, I actually think you might be able to make that argument. I don't agree with it, but it's there. That kind of this whole fight from where I sit and from where reasonable people sit, it kind of comes down to the third round, the second round. Glenn has the first, because Bermudez doesn't really get anything going. And Bermudez has the third because Glenn stops being as active. He gets taken down more. Bermudez does more from top position. I just thought that was Bermudez's round, and apparently everyone agrees. It's the second where things get a little bit muddy, because Bermudez does get some takedowns, doesn't do much with them, does have some efficacy on the feet, but he's getting both outworked in terms of general output and in terms of overall efficacy, and in terms of substantive offense. So it's one of those there. I gave it to Glenn. I didn't have too many qualms about it, but there's a lot of stupid judges who would see takedown, oh, he won the round. Decent enough win for Rick Glenn, all things considered, and Bermudez has now lost 4 in a row, and the last 3 have been split decisions. You got to change something up, buddy. Nico Price, good lord, knocks out Randy Brown in the second round with hammer fists from the bottom. I am baffled by this. I remember vividly Joe Rogan saying years ago on commentary when someone was throwing hammer fist from the bottom that, I mean, you can do it, but no one in the history of the universe has ever knocked someone out with those. Now, a few years after he said it, Mamed Khalidov, I believe it was Khalidov, I believe he badly hurt like George Santiago in, I think, the Dream promotion. I'm going in my Wayback Machine here. He was on bottom, and he did crack him with some hammer fist from the bottom that hurt him. He switched to top position, he pounded him out. I thought that was as close as we were ever going to get. Here comes Nico Price. Against the cage, kind of rolls for a knee bar. Still on bottom, Brown defends it. He winds up trapping Brown's head against his left foot. So this is Price, he has his left foot behind Brown's head. And he just tees off with his left hammer fist right to the back of the jaw that Brown never sees coming. And, I mean, I think the second one knocked him out cold, and then he hits 3 or 4 more because you just don't think that those are going to have that effect. But no, he gets out cold. Price is a dangerous guy everywhere. You can't sleep on him. Chad Mendez returns from his drug suspension and knocked out Miles Jury in the first round. Really disappointed with Jury here. He needed to do more of, and since we already talked a little bit about this fight, he needed to do what Rick Glenn did to Dennis Bermudez, which is stay mobile, stay active, and actually exploit the fact that you're, he was like 4 inches taller, reach advantage, just did not fight to maximize his tools at all. Really disappointing performance from Jury, who we may have seen the ceiling of. Mendez is back, for whatever that's worth. I don't imagine much. I mean, he's still very good. He'll still, but I mean, like throw him in there with, give him a rematch with Frankie Edgar, give him a fight with Jeremy Stevens. I mean, Brian Ortega might want to stay busy. I don't like him in any of those fights really, but I might be wrong. I mean, hey, 2 years off might have done him a world of good. It has been known to in the past. Kat Zingano defeated Marion Renault via unanimous decision, 30-27 twice, won 30-26. Just takedowns and top control from Zingano while Renault struggled to get her guard game going. This is kind of the story of this fight. Alejandro Perez defeated Eddie Wineland via unanimous decision, 29-28 across the board. Not a relatively forgettable fight, all things considered, but not a bad one. I take umbrage with the following scores in the Alexander Volkanovski versus Darren Elkins fight. It was 130-27 and 229-28, and I was baffled by these scores. I don't know what round you could give to Darren Elkins. I genuinely have no idea, and I was shocked that there was no 10-8 first round for Volkanovski. He very nearly finished Elkins twice in that first round. Baffling scores. But big win for Volkanovski, who should find himself ranked. Undefeated in the UFC. I believe he's 5-0 with them now. I've been singing his praises for a while. If you've never seen him, he's not as good a takedown artist as Khabib is, but he's kind of like a featherweight Khabib. If you just kind of need a baseline for him. When he gets on top, he postures and he hammers. Very very similar style of ground and pound to Khabib Nurmagomedov. Speaking of Nurmagomedov, a different Nurmagomedov, Said Nurmagomedov defeated Justin Scoggins via split decision. 2 29-28s for him, 1 29-28 for Scoggins. This sparked a bit of controversy. A lot of people seem to think Scoggins took the first 2 rounds handily. I'm not so sure, but the first round is kind of the swing round here. Nurmagomedov takes the third, Scoggins takes the second. I don't think that's all in dispute. First round's a little bit hinky, and it was close enough that a score for either guy is justified from what I saw. Justin Scoggins is a case study for everyone out there. This is what it looks like when you have all the tools to be a truly elite-level fighter, but your in-cage decision-making sucks. Because pretty much all of his losses in the UFC, the Isaki loss, the Munoz loss, the Moraga loss, I thought he won the Dustin Ortiz fight, but those 3 in particular, he was winning. And then he made a couple of stupid decisions. And in all 3 of those fights, it got him finished. You can have all the talent in the world, but if you can't put it together in the cage, it doesn't matter. And that's kind of where Scoggins is headed. Raoni Barcelos defeated Kurt Holobaugh via knockout in the 3rd round. This was a really nice finishing sequence from Barcelos. This was a good fight. These two came to bang. They hit each other a lot. Barcelos finally clipped Holobaugh in the 3rd with a left hook, followed up with a right shovel punch, right overhand, and right uppercut that just knocked him out. Some fun stuff from those 2 guys. Then on Fight Pass, Liz Carmouche defeated Jennifer Maia via unanimous decision. Nothing really to see here. Mark De La Rosa submitted Elias Garcia with a rear naked choke in the 2nd round. Your average flyweight fight. Some fun helicopter escapes, though, from De La Rosa. For those of you who are into that sort of thing. And kicking everything off, Jessica Aguilar defeated Jodie Esquibel via unanimous decision. 30-27 and then 29-28 twice. Not a whole lot to see here. Alright. Jeff, I'll start with you. I know at least one of the fights that you want to talk about, but what are your burning desires from that group of fights?
Liz Carmouche picked up a win. Good for her. Jessica Aguilar got her first win in the UFC on Fight Pass. So, Mendez was my MVP for the night. Did he get a performance bonus?
Probably.
Yes, he did. Well deserved. I've always been a big Chad Mendes fan, and I was happy to really see him come back and look good here. He's always, I think his explosive power has always been sort of an underrated aspect of his game. Granted, he did have a string of few losses, and he did get knocked out by Frankie Edgar in his last fight. But I recall he went on a string where he was just knocking guys out left and right, I think.
It helped that he was fighting guys who had no idea how to deal with what he was bringing.
Well,
not to dismiss it at all.
I think that's basically what happened here too.
Yeah. No, again, Jerry was just not prepared for this fight. Shockingly so, really.
But I always enjoy seeing Miles Jury get sent back to the Uber driver line. So thanks, Chad Mendes.
I was gonna say, isn't this kind of what we've come to expect from Jury? Jury shows potential one night, but then he never capitalizes on it.
Yeah, and I've kind of felt that way since the Cerrone fight, really.
Yeah.
Just because he campaigns for big fights, he gets the big names, and then he looks like hot garbage. So that's kind of my disappointment with Miles Jury. So, but I mean, I think it says a lot about Mendes, his skill level and his talents, that he can be out for that long. And we know ring rust is real, but he didn't let that affect him for this fight, having not fought in how long was his last fight?
What, a year and a half?
2.5.
2.5.
He fought in December of
2015.
Yeah,
so
when Frankie knocked him out.
That's over 2.5 years, because that was December 11th. So we're talking a period of that's
13 months, give or take.
Yeah. No.
Oh, sorry. 24.
24, 25 months. That's
No,
25.
it's more than that.
Yeah, it's more
12,
more than
24,
25 months.
30, 31 months, give or take.
So 2016, 2017. Wait, okay,
24 months is 2
No,
years.
right,
Plus
plus
6,
7.
plus 1.
26, so 30. It's like 30 some. We're talking 30 some odd months here.
Yep.
Right? Sorry, I'm bad at math.
Yeah, me too.
I don't know why. So 30 some odd months, he comes back, and it's not like Miles Jury is a tomato can. He's a real opponent, but Chad looked good. So it's good. It's just good to have him back at featherweight, to have a face like that at featherweight, especially in light of what's going on with the Max Holloway situation. And we don't know what's happening there. That could be good news. That could be really good news for Mendes coming off a performance like that. And we're not even sure if Holloway's even going to fight again, depending on the severity.
I think I joked about it after the fact. Mendes and Ortega for the interim title, so Ortega can.
I thought you were serious
wallop him.
when you wrote that on my.
I expect it to be. I expect that is a valid line of a circumstance that can happen, and I favor Ortega heavily in that fight.
I think it just seems more realistic to have, since we're getting the Aldo Stevens fight for that winner, but Aldo sort of has a history of getting hurt, and guys are just getting hurt or testing positive for drugs anyway. So who knows what's gonna go down there.
All right, Pat. Anything you want to touch on from the rest of those fights?
Yeah, I think the Nico Price, Randy Brown finish was outstanding. And when we say hammer fist from the bottom, if you haven't seen it, you may be misinterpreting what we're saying. You may think maybe he was in the guard position and just threw up hammer fist and knocked Brown out. They were in a weird transitional spot at the time when Price had rolled to try to get a knee bar, and they ended up like kind of in a weird catch spot with each other. And Price had his leg looped around Brown's head and had his head pinned in such a way that he was able to generate that hammer fist right onto the sweet spot of the jaw. And on top of that, with the momentum of where the leg placement was and how Brown's head was basically pinned, it was a really nice knockout. It was fun to watch. It was fun to see executed in a live combat scenario because record it because you'll probably never see it again. And another two factors you have to bring into that, Nico Price has very large hands for someone his size and has long forearms. So he can generate a lot of force if you give him that ability to do so, and he did, and scored a knockout you're likely to never see again in your lifetime, which was awesome. Good knockout win for Chad Mendes to get back on the horse after such a long layoff. Jury didn't do anything to deter Mendes from walking right in on him and throwing a big left hook at him. It was very similar to Ivanov and Dos Santos. Junior was able to do anything he wanted to do because of no resistance from his opponent. And Chad was able to then just look at him, Jury with his arms extended, not really punching or kicking to keep him off, not circling. Mendes was able to load up, lean to his side, and launch a hook from left field that got him and took him out. It's a lesson for guys who want to see how easy it is for a shorter man to get in on you and knock him out if you don't do anything to stop it. On the prelims, I honestly didn't know Eddie Wineland was still in the UFC. That's not a knock on him, but I think he's only been fighting like once a year. So
no, he's actually kept a pretty good pace. It's weird. This was the longest layoff of his career.
This was his first fight since April 2017, so it's been a while for him.
Yeah, I mean, the last I remember was him fighting Takeya Mitsugaki, and basically in a loser leaves town match that he won. And
a few months after that, he lost to John Dodson, and then that led into this one.
Okay, I'd forgotten about that fight, but we talk about guys who haven't changed what they do. Eddie Wineland is a prime example. Eddie Wineland is a guy who takes a little bit more square of a stance. throws a lot of 1-2s and looks to land a big right hand to take you out. And he landed a good right hand that put Perez on his butt in the first round, but he also doesn't move his head, doesn't change position, and Perez throws decent hands, so he was able to catch him a couple times in that same round and hurt him, and Eddie just never had an answer to adjust for how Perez started attacking him, and that's all she wrote on that. Excited for Said Nurmagomedov to get a win. I could have seen it going 2-1 either way, so I didn't think the score was that egregious. He's a nice kid who I've met a couple times actually at the gym out here, and so it was nice to see him pick up a win. He's a very hard worker, and it showed. Volkanovski and Elkins, man, that was I don't know how there wasn't a 10-8 thrown in there on those scorecards, and I don't know where Elkins would have won a round.
I think the first round should have reasonably been a 10-8.
Yeah, that
Easily.
was just totally one-sided, and it's not as though it was one-sided with nothing happening. He did some damage to damage in that round pretty visibly. That was a big one.
I think one judge gave Kat Zingano a 10-8.
Yep. That happened.
Oh, really?
That's it.
All right. Well, yeah.
But I mean, to me, this was more of a 10-8 than what we saw in the Zingano-Renault fight.
I would agree wholeheartedly.
In every way.
I mean, even in the Zingano-Renault fight, and it's I'll call this out just because I don't know why it's the only thing I really took away from this fight. Renault jumping guard and throwing the best elbow of her career, only to get slammed very hard, just made me laugh.
That was comical.
It's such like a defeating thing to have happen to you, I'm sure.
There was a lot of comedy last night. Again, the helicopter escapes from De La Rosa and Garcia were hilarious.
I wish I'd have gotten to see that one, but so she literally jumps standing guard against a girl who makes her bread and butter, take down from top position, and just hits her with the best elbow she can muster while holding guard. And Zingano's just like, oh, I hope you made that count because that was it. And boom, slam, and that was the rest of the fight. I laughed at that. That was fun for me.
I'm very happy that Kat Zingano won. I mean, it wasn't like a great fight, but I was happy to see her come back and have a dominant performance. This was her first win in over 4 years, right?
It
was
2014 against
Nunes, right?
I think it was the Nunes fight. It was whatever one led into her title fight.
Yep.
Yeah, Nunes.
I mean, she's lost so much. She lost her husband. She lost a chance to coach the Ultimate Fighter. She lost her original title fight against Ronda Rousey after she.
She tore her ACL, right?
Yeah.
Oh, she tore everything in her knee.
Yeah, I think she
horrible.
tore both. She had to go through multiple surgeries. She upset Miesha Tate, and then through all that, her husband committed suicide. Like the guy who basically brought her into the sport was also her coach. And then she went through so much, and then she lost 3 in a row. She lost to Rousey in 14 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, there was that, and then she lost to Pena, which there's not really any shame in losing to Pena. But then Ketlin Vieira, a couple months back,
right?
I remember watching that and being like, okay, I don't know where she goes from here.
It says something at least about her mental toughness to be able to go through all of that at 36 years old and still, just come, not lose sight of your goals and still find a way to win and be competitive. Yeah, I've always been a Kat Zingano fan, and I'm very happy for her. At least she got this one. At least.
All right. That was again Fight Night 133. Thanks to everyone who stopped by and followed along with my coverage. Appreciate you guys. Some of you keep me sane. There were some stretches on this card. There were some stretches.
Don't worry, there'll be stretches on the next one.
Anthony Smith knocks out Shogun. The end. Let's just head home early now.
I want to talk about the top 2. Because much as I hate the division, the co-main event is a relevant fight in the
How
light
did they
heavyweight
even
division.
find 4 light heavyweights to top line this card?
I mean,
What are top light heavyweights? Like, let's be real.
that's also true. I mean, we have our next light heavyweight champion on the prelims.
Shogun is a top light heavyweight because he's won his last 3, and now he's campaigning for a title shot against Cormier.
Daniel would destroy him, and I am not.
Well, that's if we don't crown an interim champion and Shogun fights somebody else. If he's able to.
What are we gonna have a rematch?
Why is it stop for the interim title, guys?
Let's have a rematch with Gustafsson and Hua, just so Gustafsson could flatten him this time.
Let's have Hua versus Smith for the interim title, because you know what? Look, Smith has won his last 4 out of 5, and Shogun's on a 3-fight winning streak.
Look,
why not?
If we're going to crown an interim champion, it's going to go onto the Gustafsson Uzdemir winner
I'm
from a couple of weeks from now.
I'm not seeing a downside to Hua Smith being for an interim title.
Neither am I. In fact, I think we should just go ahead and strip Cormier of the title since he's going to fight Brock Lesnar, and let's just make this for the real deal.
Anyway, and the UFC is in Germany, so this one actually starts like Sunday morning around 6 or so my time, I want to say.
And this one, yeah, but it will be on FS1 and not Fight Pass only.
No, but there are 3 Fight Pass fights.
Right, but yeah. It'll be a live FS1 broadcast.
Which is somehow worse. Okay, I want to say this about last night's card. Last thing I want to say. Because Dave Doyle, for the people in the MMA world, noted this on Twitter. He put this out there for whatever it's worth. On an FS1 Fight Night card, if you get on a plane in Los Angeles, when the first Fight Pass fight starts, by the time you land in Boston, there will still be 3 fights left on the main card. Think about that for just a minute. It is terrible.
I don't want it.
It is just terrible. Alright, but anyway, so the UFC is in Germany for this event. Again, it starts early morning Sunday, so that'll be fun. We will have a Sunday review show for this because it will end. I think the main card starts around noon. 11 Pacific, so noon my time. It'll go for a couple. So yeah, well, I'll have plenty of time to do a show next week. So there will still be one. Yay! All right, the main event: Mauricio Shogun Hua, 3rd best light heavyweight of all time, takes on Anthony Smith. Now Shogun was supposed to fight Volkan Oezdemir here. But the UFC looked at this card, gave the finger to the German fan base, moved Oezdemir to fighting Gustafsson at UFC 227 because they wanted to bolster that card.
Non-title.
Yet. There's time. Trust me. Okay, at 227, if either the main or co-main falls out, yeah, they're throwing a belt on the winner of that fight. I guarantee it.
I will not be upset because the UFC did not approve me for that card if that happens. And I will have a good chuckle out of that.
They might have done you a favor if that does happen.
Depends on which of the top 2 falls out.
I believe in karma, gentlemen. I believe there is order within the chaos of the universe.
Yeah, just randomness is somewhat predictable after enough time, as long as you don't run into the extreme outliers. Anyway, I mean, what do you want me to say? I can't pick Shogun in good conscience against anyone.
But he's won his last 3.
He's won his last...
And Anthony Smith has lost to Josh Neer.
That was years ago, hang on. And to be fair, Shogun lost the Corey Anderson fight. That was a horrible decision.
He's good enough to beat Jean Vellante.
So am I. So's like Sam Alvey.
Sam Alvey did beat John Vellante.
I'm not joking.
He's a Sarah Longo product.
Nalir Latifi beat John Vellante. Tom Lawler knocked out John Vellante.
But Shogun won a rematch of the best light heavyweight fight to ever happen between himself and Little Nog.
2nd best light heavyweight fight of all time. Easily the best light heavyweight fight outside of the UFC, though. Anyway, again, I can't pick Shogun here. Look, there's a couple of things going in Smith's favor. One, he's big. When I watched him in there against Rashad, I was shocked at how much more natural he looks at this weight than he did at middleweight. 'Cause he was a big middleweight, and he's a good-sized light heavyweight. I mean, he's not the biggest, but he's big. I mean, Smith's a tough guy who could easily walk onto a counter. I mean, let me say this. I will not be shocked if Shogun wins, but he has not looked good in his last several fights, even the ones he's won. His knees are still kind of shot. He's a lot more kind of plodding. He's a lot more with his hands, which were never his strong suit. The strength of his game has always been his kicks and his knees, with his punches a distant third. I'd almost argue his wrestling is more important than his punching game.
He's also pretty inactive. He's been pretty inactive the last year. Last fight was March 2017, so it's been quite a while for him.
Well over a year. I mean, again, I see Shogun having success. I don't think he's going to get blown out, but he's going to hit Smith a couple of times. Smith's going to hit him back, and I think Shogun's going to fold. It'll be sad, but such is the natural order of things in MMA. Pat, I'll start with you on this one.
He's starting to look more like Ninja Hua now, isn't he?
Oh, God. A little bit.
That's kind of why I wish he would retire, because now his performances remind me of his brother, Ninja.
Look, when he hits Shaolin, we can start really worrying, because that's the third Hua brother.
Oh, God, there's a third? The only Shaolin I knew was Rivera.
Yeah, no, there's a third. There's Murillo's brother. There's a third one. I want to say it was Shaolin.
Shemp. It's Shemp, isn't it?
I don't know. I mean, it should be, but yeah, there's three of them. Anyway,
Yeah.
Pat, your thoughts on this fight?
Either way, I don't think much of Anthony Smith, to be quite honest. But I don't have to think much of you to favor you over Shogun and favor you over Shogun heavy at this point. Look, if this was a case where Shogun was going to come in here and try to get a clinch and take down from the clinch and work top position, I might feel more inclined to think there's an argument to be made for Shogun winning this fight. But he's not going to do that. He's going to go in there and look to exchange with Smith, who is a much naturally larger guy. I don't know how he was making middleweight for as long as he was, but he did. But he looks much better at 205. Not that he looks good, but he's shown me enough to make me believe that A, Shogun's not going to be getting to a position where he can really hurt him, and B, he's very comfortable with not being overwhelmed by a moment, like when he was put in against Rashad on 225's card. He's been in the fight of the night with Thiago Santos in front of a fairly good-sized audience. He's not in there with somebody who he's going to be in awe of. He's going to take this as business as usual, and he's probably going to knock Shogun out in the first or second round.
All right, Jeff, winner for the interim title shot, right?
No, winner for the title. Anthony Smith is our next UFC light heavyweight champion.
They're going to let Cormier keep that light heavyweight belt through the Brock Lesnar fight, just for the visual of him parading two belts in the circus that will be that fight.
I stand by my prediction.
All right. Co-main event, and the last one we're going to touch on anything approaching detail. Glover Teixeira. Somehow, still a thing. I mean, he looked okay when he beat Misha Serkinov, but I don't know, man. He's slowing down. He's still unbelievably hittable, and his punching game is still the same old, same old. It's really easy to figure out. He's actually better on the ground than he is on the feet, which is something he doesn't use enough. Anyway, he's fighting Corey Anderson. Corey Anderson, who was coming off of a win over Patrick Cummins. Before that, it was back-to-back knockout losses to Jimmy Manoa and Ovin St. Preux. I don't know. I kind of like Teixeira here. I've never really been impressed with Anderson. He's going to try to push forward. He's going to try to clinch up. He's going to get out-muscled and out-worked there a little bit. Teixeira's, again, a pretty good wrestler and has a better ground game than most people are aware of because we think of him as a brawler and a power puncher. I like Teixeira here. I like him to then campaign for a rematch with Gustafsson, which would be hilarious considering how badly Gus abused him, but...
And then the winner can fight Corey Anderson for the championship.
Eventually, yeah. After Corey avenges that loss to OSP. And by avenges,
No,
I
after
mean
Corey
loses
wins
again.
the championship in the main event.
All right. Jeff, I'll start with you here, just very briefly. What are your thoughts on this? And then after this, we're just going to do Burning Desires.
This should be an academic win for Glover Teixeira. Corey Anderson does have some decent wrestling, but I mean, does he have anything other than his wrestling? I mean, has he ever...
No.
Not really.
One knockout win was Sean O'Connell. Since his tough win over Matt Van Buren, and I mean, come on.
And Sean O'Connell has lost to John Vellante, to put that in perspective.
Sean O'Connell is the talk radio host who somehow lucked his way into the UFC, but still won more fights than CM Punk. Yeah.
Still a better fighter than CM Punk in every respect.
Yep.
And he lost to John Vellante.
For context.
I think he also lost to, and look, and not to speak ill of the dead. I mean, Ryan Jimmo, what happened to him was tragic and terrible. But Jimmo was not like an exciting fighter, right? He was
Nope.
a pretty. He
Jimmo
had a
was part of one of the hand on a stack of Bibles. There was a fight with Ryan Jimmo right before he got back to the UFC. I forget the organization.
MFC.
Might be the absolute worst fight I have ever seen.
Right. Again, not to speak ill of the dead, but like some of the worst fights I've ever seen in the UFC were Ryan Jimmo fights.
Anywhere. Some of the worst fights you will see anywhere are Ryan Jimmo fights.
O'Connell got knocked out, and O'Connell got knocked out by Ryan Jimmo.
Yeah.
So there you go. All right. Yeah, I to me, unless Teixeira is just getting up there in age, which I mean he is, I feel like this should be an easy win for him.
He's over 40, isn't he? Oh, 38.
He's 38. Still for this sport to be 38, you're basically ancient, aren't you, Robert?
Depending on the division.
Yeah.
I mean, heavyweight and light heavyweight less so, but it's pretty clear that it's coming.
He's a veteran, and he's been around for a while, and he's done pretty well. But
I mean, you won't find too many 38-year-old lightweights, for example.
But he made his debut in May, so he's been in the UFC a little over 6 years now. So he's had some runs. He has some miles under his belt.
All right. Pat, any other thoughts on this one? Are you going to pull for old Corey? I think he's overtime now instead of Beastin 26-8 or whatever stupid name he had.
This should be a pretty easy win for Glover Teixeira. This is one of the fights where Glover doesn't have to be concerned about someone having a better technical game on the feet and taking away his fondness of brawling the way Gustafsson is able to do it to him. Corey Anderson offers really nothing on the feet for Glover to worry about, which should mean that he'll be in his comfort zone of throwing power shots and turning it ugly, and landing most of his power shots, to be fair. And if Corey Anderson does try to go to the ground, I don't think he's good enough to just shoot and take Glover down. And as we've talked about, Glover's grappling is easily the most overlooked aspect of his game because it's pretty decent, but he doesn't use it unless he has to. So this really should be a walk in the park for Glover. I don't see Anderson offering anything to trouble him, and Glover will win this fight. He'll go on to fight Anthony Smith, the winner of which will go on to fight Alexander Gustafsson.
Also of note, Corey Anderson is taking this fight on short notice. This was supposed to be Teixeira and Ilir Latifi. Although, somewhat ironically, Anderson and Latifi have similar games plans, despite being radically different physically. All right, as for the rest of this...
The current odds on this fight, upon looking it up just to see if I could put a bet in on Glover worthwhile, Glover is at the moment on my usual bookmaking site a minus 230 favorite.
That'll only go up. All right. As for the rest of this card, Vitor Miranda is fighting Abu Azatar. Is it a late notice thing? It is not. I do not know this guy. Vitor Miranda should take this rather handily. Vitor's had a couple of tough losses, but he's not a bad fighter by any stretch of the imagination. Marcin, because it's a European card, we must have Stefan Struve. I feel like this is some immutable truth of the universe.
And he's going to get knocked out.
Yeah, Stefan Struve is fighting Marcin Tybura. Struve has lost his last two. Alexander Volkov TKO'd him, and then Andrei Arlovsky defeated him. And Tybura's coming off of two losses. He was beating Derek Lewis rather handily until he got clipped in the third round. Before that, he just didn't have much to offer Fabricio Verdum. I like Tybura here, all things considered. Danny Roberts is back, hot off of his win over Oliver. Am I confusing Danny Roberts with somebody else? I am. I am absolutely confusing Danny Roberts with somebody else.
Doesn't that tell you everything you need to know about this fight?
I'm confusing Danny Roberts with Darren Stewart. He's fighting Dave Zawada. Going with Zawada. I got Roberts here, but wouldn't be shocked if he gets flattened. Narsat Hakparast fights Mark Jacasey. Boy, they are throwing Mark Jacasey as many bones as they can after his last two fights, because he debuted big, had a good win to follow that up, then couldn't do anything against Drakkar Klose, had nothing for Dan Hooker, and then got submitted by him. Now they're giving him a guy who has like one UFC fight. I'll go with Jacasey, but if he can't win this, man. On the prelims, we have Nick Hein and Damir Hadzovic. That's actually not a terrible fight. I mean, Hadzovic won me over forever on the back of two fights. First of all, his fight with Mairbek Taisimov, despite losing that badly, he fought. I appreciated that. Then that beautiful knee to knock out Marcin Held with. I mean, brutal knee strike. Coming off of a loss to Alon Patrick. I kind of like him against Nick Hein. I don't have anything against Hein, but I mean, Hein's relatively underrated. His only losses in the UFC are to James Vick and Davi Ramos. I mean, those are two really good guys. At welterweight, Emil Weber Mech is fighting Bartosz Fabinski. I kind of like Mech here. I know I've seen Fabinski fight, but I can't remember anything about it. At featherweight, Khalid Taha fights Nad Narimani. One of these guys has to be local. Go with Taha because his last name is shorter. Literally my picking criteria there. At light heavyweight, future light heavyweight champion Justin Ledet makes his debut in that weight class after a undefeated run at heavyweight. He's returning. He's been he originally was a light heavyweight, then he moved up to heavyweight, got into the UFC. Back at light heavyweight, he is fighting Alexander Rakic. I like Ledet here. That's only a quasi-facetious comment when I say he's a future light heavyweight champion. Then on Fight Pass, Davey Grant fights Manny Bermudez. That's kind of a tough one. Go with Grant. Jeremy Kimball, for some reason. He's got to be there to lose to the local guy. I mean, that's pretty much it. He's fighting, Darko Stasic. I'm going with Stasic until I hear otherwise. I think the matchmaking here will favor Stasic. And then kicking everything off, Damian Stasiak fights... Boy, that's a weird... Lu Pingwan? The pronunciation of that last name is going to vary a lot depending on which country he's from specifically, and I will butcher it no matter what it is. I'll take Stasiak there. He's more proven. All right, Jeff, I'll start with you on this one. Any fights on there you're looking forward to? Any diamonds in the rough, so to speak?
Excuse me a second. Okay, what was that?
Yeah, fair enough. Pat, how about you? I know you're a big Justin Ledet fan, so anything you'd like to expound on there or any other fights you might be looking forward to from this card?
In 18 months, Justin Ledet will be the light heavyweight champion of the world after he takes that belt from Corey Anderson.
All right. That's the card. Again, that will be early Sunday morning, so I'll have coverage of that in the MMA Zone of 411 Mania, so stop by, say hello. I appreciate it. All right, Jeff, any major news that's come out over the last couple of weeks we want to touch on here?
Yes, well, last weekend, Brock Lesnar challenged Daniel Cormier to a future fight for the heavyweight title at UFC 226. Now we have a better idea of when that fight could happen. USADA announced that Brock Lesnar has re-entered their testing pool because that was sort of the major hang-up here is Brock had not yet re-entered the testing pool for USADA. He has re-entered the testing pool. Provided he completes his suspension and passes all of his tests, he'd be eligible to fight Daniel Cormier for the title in early January 2019. So that is the earliest we could see the fight happen if it gets booked. And then Cormier says he plans on retiring in, March?
Something like that.
I mean, I don't really know realistically how many times Cormier at his age could even fight in that time frame. I doubt the UFC would want to risk or add unnecessary risk to making the Lesnar-Cormier matchup fall apart unless Cormier were to fight, I think, someone else who could potentially be a good opponent for Brock. Hey, maybe it'll be John Jones. We'll see. So there you go. Lesnar is also the WWE Universal Champion, so he's back in the USADA testing pool.
How great would it be if in the middle of the fight between Brock and Cormier, Braun Strowman just storms the ring and cashes in and wins both the UFC and WWE championships?
He does have a Money in the Bank briefcase.
It would be funny because he'd cash in on Brock, and then Daniel Cormier, being the freak of nature that he is, would literally throw him out of the cage. Because the visual of Braun coming in, pinning like Cormier's on top of Brock, Strowman comes in and sits on both of them, pins Lesnar. Cormier's response is to grab that high crotch he does onto Strowman, lift him over his head, and slam him. And the visual of Daniel Cormier, who's like 5'8", slamming Braun Strowman because Cormier could absolutely do it physically would be great. But other than that, I mean, I said it before, I don't watch MMA for the circus, but other people do, so. Anyway, what else
Alan Jouban, he was supposed to fight Danny Roberts for Germany. Mm-hmm. He got injured and was replaced for that card, which we already addressed. So I like Alan Jouban, so I'm a little disappointed with that. Joanne Calderwood is fighting Kalindra Faria at UFC Lincoln on August 25th.
Alrighty. That's certainly two people getting in a cage and wasting time.
And that'll be its women's strawweight. And
wait. Why is Calderwood back at strawweight?
Not strawweight, flyweight.
Okay.
125. It's at 125. Excuse me.
Yeah, I mean, I just would be surprised if she had decided to go back down to strawweight after all the noise she made about wanting to be at flyweight is all.
And Brendan Shaw basically outed Dana White as having slept with Ronda Rousey. So
I imagine
they had a pissing contest on Instagram.
I don't know how Dana and Ronda just suddenly both became each other's worst mistakes, considering that Ronda's with Travis Brown and Dana's long, sad history of public mistakes. But I don't know. I mean, is anyone surprised? Honestly, is anyone surprised by that? I just thought that was understood. Like,
I mean, you hear things throughout the years, but I mean, and look, this isn't really like an admission, you know. I mean, look, I would say I would agree with anyone who says that Brendan Schaub barely has two brain cells to rub together. but he is very successful. That's undeniable.
True.
Did he ride the coattails of Joe Rogan? Yes, but he rode those coattails to millions. So, you know,
Wish I could ride Joe Rogan's coattails to that kind of
I
success.
mean,
I don't mind his show.
right?
And there are times where like he actually kind of reins Brian Callen in.
That's always the most hilarious thing when you have that exchange. Like, no, sorry, you're wrong. Like, how much crow does that guy have to eat when it's Brendan Schaub correcting him?
Yeah, and Schaub actually, I don't know if it's because of the chemistry between him and Callen, but if you listen to isolated clips, not the whole show, I really can't sit through a whole episode of it. But there are certain topics he will speak about, and I'm interested to hear what he has to say. And a lot of times he can make a very salient point. It's just you have to take him in small doses when it comes to these things. Like, I'll listen when he talks about Rhonda because of the nature of their relationship, and he has a fairly good, intimate knowledge of her from a personality standpoint, as much as anybody does. So I don't mind hearing him when he speaks about that or speaks about what things were on the inside of, camps he's been in. Other stuff he's not really qualified to talk about, whatever, neither am I.
But, like, here's an example of, like, my issue with Schaub and just... Well, there was the one thing where he complained about the Fox Sports analyst panel, and he basically said it was an affirmative action panel and all those guys are on that panel because they're black, basically denigrating the career of Eve Edwards, which was, considering at one point, was Eve Edwards not basically one of the top lightweights in the world?
He's the only guy I've seen hit an Inzaguri to win a fight.
That's true. He did that.
So he did that, and then he went on this whole long rant where he's like, the UFC didn't do any favors when Chris Weidman fought Damian Maia in Abu Dhabi. That fight was not in Abu Dhabi. That fight was in, I believe it was definitely in the United States. I think that, I looked it up. I think it happened in Chicago.
Yeah, and it was a short notice.
That sounds
thing.
about right.
It was a short notice.
Maya's original opponent fell out, and Weidman took that fight on
right.
short notice.
Weidman took that fight on short notice, and that fight. I mean, it wasn't a great performance, but doing that helped Weidman, did it not? Like Weidman was not a contender at that point. That fight pushed him closer to becoming a title contender. So yeah. I'm like, he went on this whole long rant about, well, it wasn't necessarily, he made this ridiculous example that makes no sense. So I'm like, why are you saying this? And he just says things sometimes that are so beyond the pale. But that being said, this whole situation with Dana White should have not engaged him. It was dumb to engage Schaub like that and try and cut Schaub down a peg. But whatever. I'm not the UFC president. He can do what he wants. He's a grown man. But, I think in this day and age, you don't have to respond to all the trolls on social media. And you really should.
No, you don't, and it's kind of sad that he insisted on doing so.
It's like did you guys hear about this? It was a big story in the gaming world, but this game developer who got fired over some tweets?
No.
I think I heard something about it, but I don't remember the specifics.
Basically, you can get fired for your tweets now, right?
Pretty much anywhere, not just in gaming.
Yeah. Pretty much anywhere you can get fired for your tweets or like your social media interactions. Everyone from a president, a CEO on down, just limit your social media interactions. Be smart. I know that might be asking a lot for some immature people who are very immature for their age, but just try to be like me on social media. Be like me. Talk about fights and movies and entertainment and all that stuff. Don't talk about politics. You know, just be like me.
All right. Anything else we wanted to touch on, or are we about ready to close up here?
I mean, but that's not how Eskimo brothers should talk to each other, Robert. Oh, yeah, there is. Oh, yeah. Did we talk about Gastelum Whitaker?
Nope.
Ultimate Fighter? There you go.
That's the pairing now?
That's the pairing.
Yeah, they announced it at
Gastelum,
the Tough
Whitaker
27
for the title.
finale. Gastelum and Whitaker are going to coach Tough 28. Gag me with a spoon. Then at some point hopefully before the end of the year, they'll fight for the middleweight title. I think they were targeting. Let me see if I can find out which event it was, because I know they'd been talking about it. It was near the end of the year.
Provided Whitaker doesn't get hurt again or get another catastrophic.
I mean,
injury.
Between Whitaker and Gastelum, neither of those guys has the greatest history as far as that goes. I think they were thinking about maybe 231, so the Toronto card.
Okay.
On December 8th. But
the
again,
real noodle cooker here, though, for me is that we're still getting another season of The Ultimate Fighter.
They've released the cast for The Ultimate Fighter
Yep.
Heavy Hitters.
Yep, I thought we were finally done.
In fairness, there are two women on the because I forget the second weight category, but they are doing a women's featherweight division for this. And I know of at least two of the women, so that's a step up from like every season of The Ultimate Fighter for the last 3 years.
Are they Invicta regulars?
Sorry, what was that?
Are they Invicta regulars?
No, one of them is. The other one is. I forget who the other one. I forget where I know the other one from, but not from Invicta. Because I know Paniki and Zod from Invicta. But I do not remember where I know the other lady from. Oh, it's male heavyweights. Oh God. Hey, Braddock. Hey, it's Braddock Silva. Good for him.
I like the match. I mean, all things considered, I do like the matchup. I mean, Gastelum he's basically earned his title shot when you get right down to it.
I don't think he's a bad opponent by any means. I think he's just as justified in that role as anybody else. My issue is, and listen, I probably watch more Tough than most at this point, especially for people who like MMA.
Oh yeah, Larissa Pacheco was the other one, who I know. And I think I know her from, again, outside of Invicta. I mean, really, why hasn't the UFC put in a concentrated effort to get Julia Budd? I mean, Cyborg would still smash her, but Budd's at least a very talented, proven, legitimate featherweight.
I think she's gotten a lot better in the last 2 years, and I don't know how much her camp has been altered or anything, but she's come a long way from where she was. Like, I remember her in Strikeforce and the Challengers fights, and I was like, this girl is not very good. And she's a lot better now, but my point about The Ultimate Fighter, I probably watch more of that show than almost any legitimate MMA fan who actually likes MMA and wants to watch good MMA. Yep. Because that show has become so bad. And even then, like, in the more recent years, you try to think of, like, the better seasons that there have been. And, like, aside from Claudia and Joanna's season, which largely was entertaining for the personal rivalry between the coaches more than anything, the last season of that show was so horrendous, was so bad. This undefeated season where the talent level was such garbage. The fights were so bad. It legitimately had the worst in-fight moment I've ever seen in Tough, where a guy literally ran into a standing guillotine and was choked out in a standing guillotine.
Somehow that is worse than, like, all those heavyweight seasons. I don't know how,
like,
but it is.
Are you kidding me? And this is a quote-unquote talent pool of guys who were unbeaten in whatever promotions they were found in. It was terrible. It was awful in every imaginable way. How? And now we're going back to heavyweights where you don't even have quality heavyweights in the UFC outside of maybe 4 guys, maybe 5. And now we're supposed to think that in these lesser promotions, they haven't already signed one of these heavyweights who could be somebody in these divisions?
It's going to be glorious, Pat. It's going to be glorious combat. It's going to be a glorious season.
I feel so bad for Larry Zonka. That's
Okay.
all I have to say.
Well, what do you guys think about the Whitaker-Gastelum matchup?
I'm fine with it. I don't like Gastelum's chances because his striking, while effective, is also a whole lot of let's walk forward, throw some head fakes, and then throw 1-2s. And Whitaker's striking is significantly more sophisticated. If Gastelum comes in looking to wrestle, he has a much better chance than if he comes in looking to stand and bang. But
Between the two, who do you think is the better wrestler?
Gastelum's the better wrestler.
Okay.
I would agree with that, but I think it's how they use that wrestling in their fights. You know what I mean? It's the tale of 2 different wrestlers.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like Whitaker, he held his own against Yoel Romero, who's an Olympian.
Well, that's the thing. I think defensively he's become a very good wrestler, but he's not going to be the guy to look for takedowns and things of that nature, whereas Gastelum is still, as long as he's not falling in love with brawling, I think he's a better offensive wrestler and probably is a better defensive wrestler, but it's just Whitaker applies it very well to the situations he finds himself in when he has to.
Just still annoyed that Whitaker still doesn't have a title defense yet. So this is technically, provided Gastelum makes weight and this fight happens.
It would be hilarious if Gastelum's the one who misses weight for this fight.
I mean,
Just and his first 2 fights as official champion are against guys who miss weight.
Yeah.
So I would laugh so hard. Oh, the other thing I wanted to touch on, I think, Yoel Romero said he's kind of planning on moving up to 205 and would like to fight Daniel Cormier. I don't think that's in the cards because of the timetable, but I would love that fight. I mean, that might be legitimately the best wrestling in MMA that you would ever see.
Cormier will still win, but I mean,
I would favor him, but
yeah.
I also
depending
know
on,
not
I
to,
mean, look, that might be a realistic possibility depending on how things pan out.
I mean, again, I favor Cormier, but if he gets sloppy, I mean, he's not going to have the easy time taking down Romero that he has other guys. And if he's not mindful of his defensive issues, the way Romero throws actually gets around a lot of the mummy guard that Cormier uses. So, again, I wouldn't count Romero out, but I would favor Cormier, and that would be interesting.
Yeah, so I think that's about it for major news items.
Alrighty, then let's go ahead and wrap this up. So, Pat, nice to have you back. What would you like to plug very briefly?
Thank you very much, guys. It's been awesome being back with you both. So Mark Radulich and I have done a bit of watch-alongs, so to speak, for the Radulich and Broadcasting Network. We checked out some good old clips from the days of the Bill Watts UWF/Mid-South promotion, some really fun matches and memories from there. You can hear our commentary on them on the Radulich and Broadcasting Network. The Casual Heroes are back in recording. Gavin and Chris have kicked it off with Old Guys, Old Games, which is available on YouTube at the moment. So you can watch the games as they're played, hear some fun commentary. Gavin and I will be recording a new version of our old boxing show that we used to do. We're going to start it off by breaking down the HBO GOAT tournament, where HBO took 32 fighters that have fought on their network, put them in a fictional tournament against each other. They're down to their final 4. Gavin and I, once this concludes, are going to do our own brackets and see where we end up versus where the popular Twitter vote ended up. I can already tell you we disagree heavily with some of the choices, and we have our reasoning for it, which you'll hear on the show, which is probably going to be a 2-parter. Other than that, you can hear me on source material. I've done 2 of the last 3 with Jesse Starcher. We did Trial of Galactus by Fantastic Four. We've done the Infinity the Infinity Gauntlet. We've done a watch-along to the video game released about the Ultraverse character Prime, which you can check out. That was released for Sega CD. And we do a commentary on the Ultraverse itself. So a lot of fun things happening. You can check them all out. Thank you guys both. Great to be back with you.
Yeah.
God bless and Godspeed.
Will the UWF have some Sting, some Blade Runner Sting?
We're going to get to that. We've had some Duggan. We've had some DiBiase. We've had some one-man gang. And Mark has kind of really fallen in love with the old days of the UWF. So we're very
kind of
likely
up his alley. It's this nice blend of realism with kind of the the cartoony stuff.
It's my favorite promotion ever. I think the UWF of 1986 and 87 is probably as good, if not better, than anything ever.
Jeff, what do you got to plug? I know you've seen a couple of movies.
Okay, so my review of Ant-Man and the Wasp is up now. My review of The Rock's first box office flop since Baywatch. Skyscraper.
Snitch flopped.
What was that?
Snitch flopped.
Yeah. Baywatch was after that.
Oh, sorry. My apologies.
I said it was his first flop since Baywatch.
Yeah, I forget the chronology of those.
Baywatch was last year. Skyscraper
was a critical flop, but was it a money flop too?
Yes.
Which one?
Baywatch, horrible financial.
Oh yeah.
Well.
Oh yeah. Big time. Rampage actually did okay, not great.
Rampage is still, I think, one of the top 10 for the year. Just recently fell out of it. It's over.
I guess. Mainly because of overseas. It didn't tank in the U.S., but it didn't do amazing.
Now, about every third movie The Rock does tends to bomb, but the other two, one of them is a moderate success, the other's a significant success.
I think he's kind of playing the numbers game with all these.
Yeah, you're that busy that long, you can't churn out a hit every time. So something has to drop off.
The other thing is he's trying to he gets a new movie out every quarter now, basically. So
I imagine his goal is to be in major theaters from January to December for one whole calendar year. and it's gonna, if it's not 19, it'll be 20. He'll do it.
So that Ant-Man and the Wasp, my Luke Cage season 2 review, also my interviews for Luke Cage with showrunner Cheo Hodari Coker and star Simone Missick. Also, I will be reviewing The Equalizer 2 this week, and next week will be Mission Impossible Fallout, so the latest mission. So we'll be doing movie reviews throughout the month, and later this week I will be going to San Diego for Comic-Con, so I'll be having some coverage from there. So I will not be here next weekend because I will be on Comic-Con for the last day and then driving home. So thank you, gentlemen, and have fun this week.
All right, as for myself, you can listen to Mark Radulich and I review Ant-Man and the Wasp. That was for as blasé as the movie is, Mark and I got into a pretty significant discussion about elements of it. So you can listen to that this Tuesday. We will be reviewing The Rock's apparent flop, Skyscraper. Mark's already seen it. The only thing he told me, because I haven't seen it yet, was that it seems like it's designed to do well globally rather than domestically. So we'll see how the international numbers pan out, but domestically not doing so well at the moment. But we'll be there to tell you if that's a fair reaction to it or not, and to tell the critics how much they suck, because they do. Then we'll be back next Sunday for, again, we'll have the review of UFC Fight Night 134, and we will have a preview of UFC on Fox 30. Somebody's going to die. The main event, the rematch between Eddie Alvarez and Dustin Poirier. You also have Jose Aldo and Jeremy Stevens, Joanna Jędrzejczyk and Tisha Torres, Alexander Hernandez and Olivier Aubin-Mercier in a battle of up-and-coming lightweights. That main event is all you need. Just Alvarez and Poirier, their first fight was a glorious, violent mess, marred by Alvarez's illegal knee. He should have been disqualified for it. Running it back, so we'll have a full preview of that next week. Until then, I think that's everything. I don't believe I have a Thursday date this week, so until then, thank you all very much for listening. I deeply appreciate it. I don't deserve it, but I hope to have actually earned it at some point in the future. Point your friends at us if they're fans of the sport, you think they'd enjoy the show. Always appreciated. Many thanks to Pat and Jeff for their continued support and participation in this show, because if it's just me talking to myself, nobody cares. Alright, that's it for me. Everybody stay safe out there, and please continue to be well, be safe, and behave.